I'm enjoying watching this participant count rise up. Look at this, 14, 15, 16. Whoa. I think this is the period that is called the twilight zone, isn't it? It's that bit between us all here and watching these lovely numbers rise up, which is so delightful to see. Look, we're at 26 now. I'd be interested to see if any of the participants, you can put it in your chat, if you're not from UK, if you've got any international delegates. I'll call delegates rather than participants, because it's pretty large participant focus group. Canada, yes, Naomi, well done. Germany, one from Dubai, Portugal. Oh my goodness, I'm reading these out because not everybody can see the questions that are coming in. Okay. Swindon, yes. Southall, definitely. Well, we're at 13:01, but as I can see the numbers coming in, I hope you won't mind if we give it just a minute or two more before we start. 35. And Jane Lewis, Dr. Jane Lewis from Poole, welcome. All right, 38. What do we think, panelists? One more minute, that 13:03, shall we start at that? Okay. I know what it is. There are some people who put a kettle on and just stirring their tea or their coffee. And if I know one or two of my friends are joining in, they're just getting that vodka and tonic ready. So, yeah. All right, look, we're coming up to 13:03. With the permission of my fellow panelists here, if I may start this wonderful roundtable session that we have for Colour of Research events, core. Let me start by saying that this whole technical wizardry that we see here would not have happened if it wasn't for Charlene Adamea, who's been the engineering power behind making this happen. So a huge thanks to her. If anybody has any questions, please put them through on the chat. We'll try to get through to them later. But let me do a little intro about me, and then each of the panelists will introduce themselves. And there's a couple of questions that we've got. We'll go through those, but we want to try and keep this as interactive as we can. We don't want it too prescriptive, so we'll just do it that way. So I'm Bob Qureshi, if you've not come across me before, and apologies if you have come across me before. So I view London and Leeds market research viewing facilities. I'm also one of the owners of the Research Club, the networking event, and I'm also one of the directors at Prevision Research, a telephone research centre. But one of my proudest involvements is that with the Colour of Research. I was very fortunate to be one of the co-founders with an amazing team, and it would be rude of me to try and mention everybody's name and take up too much time, but go to the website, colourofresearch.org. Everything is there, and you'll find out so much more about us. I don't think there's any housekeeping. According to my lists here, I've been asked to let everybody know this session is being recorded. So if you don't get to see it all today, you can pick it up later, and somewhere on the website or LinkedIn will send you all the details for that. I've had a note from our new chair, Shazia. Shazia has said to us, Shazia Janai, she has said to me that, look, I've sent out notes to everybody about the mentorship programs. We are trying to get in touch with everybody, mentees and mentors. You will be contacted because the uptake has been overwhelming and we're trying to get through to everyone. So if you're going to fire in a question saying, I haven't heard from anybody, wait, everything will come through to you. So without further ado, let me just remind everybody what we believe the overlens of this particular session is. And that's a word from Nasya. I've stolen that from her. The overlens of this roundtable session is to discuss the experiences, how one's personal career development can be enhanced, especially for those from ethnic minority backgrounds who might not necessarily know where or who to turn to for guidance and support. And if they are an amazing leader somewhere, how they can guide other people in developing their careers. And sometimes the questions can be outside of your career world, but just an emotional thing that you can't talk to anybody else about, but it's to kind of do with work. Let me introduce you to and ask them to introduce themselves, our four wonderful panelists that we have here. So I'll start with you according to my screen here. Raj, I'm going to turn to you. Tell us a bit about yourself and then we'll work our way through.
Thank you, Bob. What a wonderful introduction. So hi, everyone. I'm Raj, a senior manager at Lucid, which is now part of the Cint Group company. I'm also a mentor for Core. I've been in the industry predominantly in sales for over 13 years now, so it's definitely been quite some time. In all these years, there's a lot I've seen and there's a lot I've learned. So I joined Core as a mentor in June 2020 to encourage individuals to create a voice and essentially help them find ways to progress within their career paths. The role as a mentor has been incredibly rewarding and a huge success in my eyes. I believe I contributed to turning someone's career around, well, I hope I did, who I would say was stuck in a bit of a rut due to a lot of self-doubt. We worked on improving confidence levels as well as, real life scenarios. We even did a session on how to think like a leader and so much more. So I'm really looking forward to expanding on this later in this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raj. Nasya, can we turn to you? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Nasya Burke, and currently I work in an ad tech company called Smartly as a platforms partnership manager for EMEA. But previously to that, I've been at Cantor and other market research firms, and I have been in the industry for about 10 years. And currently I'm a mentor at Core, which has been really rewarding. And again, we will get into some of the details later on.
That's wonderful, Nasya. Annabelle, may I turn to you? Tell us about yourself.
Great, thank you, Bob. Yeah, I'm Annabelle Jones. I currently work at Branding Science. I'm a senior research executive there. I've been in the industry for, I think, 3 years this year, so not as long as the rest of the team, but definitely finding my feet still. And last year I was involved in the Women in Research, so the WIRE mentorship program. And my mentor was actually Shazia, who's now the chair at Core. So great job there. And I can't say how useful it was having her over the last sort of year and a half now. I was going through big transitions in my role. I was moving up to senior research executive, really helping me find the next steps, and having outside perspective has just really, really helped in my career so far. So really excited to speak with everyone today to share a bit about mentoring.
Thank you, Annabelle. I wish we could clone Shazia. How about a dozen of her?
Me
It
too.
would help so many more people. Absolutely wonderful chair. And we know she's a wonderful ally for everything to do with ethnic minority and small groups everywhere. So, Michelle, over to you.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Michelle Denslow and I'm the Membership Mentoring and CPD Manager at MRS. And I manage the mentoring scheme for MRS. And we set the mentoring scheme up in 2016. And since we opened applications, we've helped over 300 members through the scheme, and we have trained over 160 mentors. And we're just about to start our 12th intake. So if anyone's interested in applying, then please do look on our website.
Well, that's amazing, Michelle. 12th intake, I mean, the experience you would have had, and we're going to learn more about that. I'm going to read something out, and I have to thank Sia Najumi, who pulled this together for me. But it says that Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations found that mentoring programs boosted minority representation at the management level by 9% to 24%, compared to -2%. Who ever thought there was a minus, but there is a -2% to 18% with other diversity initiatives. So the same study found that mentoring programs also dramatically improved promotion and retention rates for minorities and women, 15% to 38% compared to non-mentored employees. Now, I had to get those numbers out because we are a market research industry and we want to hear some numbers and some facts. So I thought I'd get that out of the way before we hear the stories and the experiences that we all had. So let me turn to you, Raj, firstly. Let me ask you, could you share more about the mentoring experience that you've had? And was there anything that was unexpected within the course of that experience? And I'll have a question for the rest of you all, and then we'll all chip in together. Raj.
Awesome, absolutely. Thank you, Bob. The experience was unbelievably rewarding, Bob. It was exhilarating. It was something I really wanted to do. The discussions that we had sort of reminded me of the same things that I felt many years ago, and just how much we resonated. I had a mentee who was very well spoken, extremely talented, and she had a lot to offer. So I think it made me think of how much of a problem we have in the industry and why like-minded people are hesitating to speak up. I really do wonder how many more are out there in similar situations. It's in fact really quite worrying. You know, why are people from color reluctant to voice their concerns or issues, even when they're so skilled and experienced? You know, I believe, you know, this does come down to a combination of things such as background, age, early life privileges, upbringing, education, and, you know, so much more. And, you know, I think people need to be aware of these factors in every organization in you know, market research. Another thing I actually wasn't really expecting, and it was a bit of a, you know, surprise to me, is really understanding the depth of issue until we well into the program. And I believe this came down to working on developing that trust and realizing that not everyone will fully open up in the first or second session. So I actually didn't think we were going to collectively achieve the results we did, and the outcome, to say, you know, the least, was extraordinary. So yeah, that's what I really experienced, and it was great.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raj, for that. Nasya, let me turn to you. What do you think has been your key takeouts and learnings of the role of mentorship that you had, you know, with CORE? And I guess what example do you think you could share with us as maybe a positive benefit that could perhaps help you or might help someone else? But can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are a number of key takeouts that I've gathered from my experience as a mentor, and also in the past I've been a mentee. I think from a mentee perspective, having a mentor can provide a safe space to improve your career paths and your options and navigate those choices that come throughout your career. Outside the business as usual, sometimes the work environment doesn't always provide the best time to talk about certain things that you're going through, because there can be a number of things going on. But having that safe space to just talk to someone that you're building a relationship with about, with trust about your career, can provide a really good opportunity to navigate those choices. It's also an opportunity to soundboard new ideas and learn from someone who might be, a few years more experienced than you, and they can tell you from their good choices and their bad choices. And so you can soundboard maybe some new ideas that are coming to you and see how they would go about it from their experience and have that lens. And also sometimes there are opportunities to learn about new opportunities that may be in your industry that you may not be privy to in your day-to-day role. I think from a mental perspective, the learning never stops, right? So you could be mentoring someone who's just new to the industry and they have a fresh eyes perspective, and you always have to think, especially if you've been doing things for a number of years in the same way, different ways that you can do things from that person's perspective. It also challenges your thinking in that same vein, because we always have to be innovating, always thinking about the the best way and best practice, and someone with a new perspective can shed some light on that. And it also does test your problem solving skills, because they may come to you with issues that they're facing. You've got to think about how you can help solve that issue, putting those practical steps in place to help them progress. So I think in that way, it can be a two-way street of added value. From my experience, an example I can think of that really showed the power of mentorship is when I was trying to transition in my career to something completely different. And I was interviewing. I spoke to my mentor about this, and she'd done something similar, and through her power, her connections, her experience, and the relationship that we were building, and she knew what I was capable of, was able to advocate for me without my prompting. So I didn't even say anything to her, but she spoke to the interviewer, and that helped build my credibility and, you know, make me be a favorable candidate in that process. So I think that also shows that, you know, your mentors, when they have a vested interest, they can you know, do more than you're actually expecting. So yeah, I think mentorship definitely has its benefits for today.
Excellent, wonderful. There are some great comments coming in on the chat. Only we can see them all. So make a note, and if I don't cover one, put your hand up and say, look, I want to really talk about this. Look, Annabelle, what you've heard from Raj and Nasya, how much, or if any of it, does that resonate with you as someone who's relatively new into the market research industry? And I was thinking that perhaps were there any latent, you know, less obvious, longer term benefits of the mentorship program that you've come across that you could share, and perhaps, you know, if you like, encourage other people into our industry, or those who are only in it for a year or 2 years, what can they glean from it?
Yeah, absolutely. From what they were both just saying there, there's so much that resonates with my experience of being a mentee. I know something that I definitely struggled with but quickly overcame was just being able to open up and be quite vulnerable in those sessions. I think I got so much out of it because I was able to have that safe space and speak quite honestly about things that were going on both at work and also in my personal life that were affecting things at work. I think there's also a really big benefit in having outside perspective, especially as I'm quite new to the industry. It was really helpful having just someone to bounce ideas off, and someone, because I specialize in healthcare and pharma market research. It was really helpful having someone from consumer to bounce ideas off and like provide a bit of a fresh perspective there. In terms of sort of other benefits that weren't as obvious to me when I signed up for the program, I think there was such a big benefit in being connected with Shazia, and then also being connected to so many other people who look like me and have the same values as me. So it wasn't just one person, it was a whole group of people who were so supportive and willing and sort of eager to help me in my career. So I think that was something that I could never find anywhere else without being in a mentorship program. So I think that was what it was for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And the fact that you're here on this panel is testament to a process that if it's not happening with Colour of Research, it could happen at the Market Research Society or elsewhere. I think that neatly leads me on to Michelle. Thanks for those figures that we heard earlier, which I thought were quite incredible, because we know all of this cascades to more people. So some pretty impressive metrics there. What do you think has changed or perhaps evolved since 2016, which I think was the time when you first started this on the mentoring program? And what do you think still remains the challenge? And I do have a follow-up question, so perhaps on those to start with.
Okay, thanks. They're good questions. So challenges are just finding availability and finding the right matches, really. That's one of the tricky things to try and initially start the process. We put a lot of time and effort into trying to find that right match. And although as you've heard, we've got quite a good pool of mentors, they're not always available. So it's just trying to find that right match. The changes has been obviously due to the pandemic. We don't always have to look at locations, so people are more willing to meet, well, they didn't have much choice, meet via Zoom, although that's starting to change. And some of our mentors do still prefer to meet face-to-face with their mentee. And also when we initially started the scheme, we were quite surprised that we were getting a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring requests. So that our mentees were more mature than we initially expected. But now we're getting more and more mentees that are just starting out in their career, and also asking for different things. So obviously from different backgrounds, whether they're looking for someone from a similar working class or ethnicity, or we're also working with Pride, Emirates Pride, to make sure that we have a good, diverse selection of mentors for everyone. So there's some of the changes, but I'd say the tricky thing is still just finding that right match. So that's why we always are looking for more mentors to help us make sure that we've got a wide enough pool of mentors.
So here's my follow-up question. What do you think are the essential things that one needs to consider before applying to either become a mentor or a mentee? Because I'm sure of the 69 people that are tuning into this right now, there's probably a couple there, let's call them our viewers, who are thinking, I would really like to be a mentor, or I'd really like to be a mentee. What are your thoughts on that? What do people need to consider?
Well, it's really important to really consider these things before you apply to become a mentor or mentee. So initially, let's start with mentees. You need to think about what you want to get out of the scheme. And we've had some incredible stories, people really turning their careers around from the benefit of having a mentor, but they've really put the commitment into the scheme. So you need to think about your objectives, what it is, try and be realistic. Although all of our mentors and the mentors within CORE as well are volunteers. So although they are willing to put time and commitment to the scheme, they're not trainers. So, and sometimes what someone wants to get out of the scheme and what they write on the application isn't necessarily realistic, and or something that the scheme can provide. So you need to think about what you want to get out, but most of all, it's make sure you've got the time to commit to the scheme. Because, sorry.
So no, carry on.
Yeah, just the time that you commit to the scheme, really. Make sure you've got the time, that you've spoken to, if necessary, spoken to your employer, make sure they're aware. And if you put lots of time and energy into it, I can guarantee you'll benefit from the scheme.
That's really, really helpful. I've got another question for you, but I'm going to park it for a moment and give someone else a question they might want to answer. I'm looking at Raj on this one, but it could be answered by anyone. And that is, why should mentees and mentors join the CORE program? I mean, why would you recommend it?
Absolutely, Bob. I mean, this is a very important question and the purpose of this roundtable, of course. So perhaps we should talk about mentees first. Now, this scheme is not only for those who are perhaps struggling or unhappy at their place of work. You know, it could be for those who are pretty content and just want someone from the ethnic background who they want to speak to and relate to. You know, the program provides that flexibility. It doesn't need to be anything stringent if it doesn't work for most people. I mean, people that, you know, there's not much time, and there's obviously a lot of pressures out there, you know, target pressures, and we understand time, you know, time is important, and no one can really spare a lot of time. Honestly speaking, you know, from a personal point of view, I really truly believe if something like CORE existed in my early years of my career, I probably would have gone much further than where I am now, honestly. Yeah. And I say this because they hopefully would have perhaps highlighted the gaps I needed to work on, rather than me having to do it myself later down the line. You know, another thing I feel perhaps some people may be quite conscious about is confidentiality with CORE. There may be some people out there who really want to join, but they're being hesitant about opening up, or worried discussions won't be kept confidential, especially if they don't want their employers to know. You know, so just to reiterate, mentorship relationship is kept confidential here at CORE unless the pair want to make it public. You know, and so, you know, coming on to why mentors should join. Now, we have some incredibly talented senior leaders from ethnic backgrounds, you know, like yourself, Bob, even, who have made it to the top. And we would love if they could be part of CORE, you know, the inspiration they could share and what they have done to get there, you know, would be incredible for all of us to hear. They may have no idea how much this could shape someone's career. You know, we still don't have enough people, you know, of color, of senior levels, and so we do need to do whatever we can to narrow that gap. You know, it honestly won't take much time. The main thing we are looking for from prospective mentors is just to listen. That's it.
Just to listen. I'm going to have that as a strap line for us, just to listen. I'm going to read out a question from one of the audience, and I won't read out their name unless they click and say, you can say it's me. I've recently decided to look for a mentor because I want to build the confidence to take on more visible, impactful projects. It seems less scary to put my hand up for some of those risky pieces of work if I feel like I will be supported. Now, Annabelle, in the start of your career, how do you think mentorship has impacted you when you think about that particular point that someone has made?
I mean, yeah, I think that question is definitely something that I had before, and even at the start of my sort of mentorship journey. It was really tough to put my hand up for things, and if I didn't feel like I had the support network behind me. And actually, when I was having those conversations with my mentor Shazia, it was really good to be able to get her perspective on how things would be received. So if I had an issue with something that happened with senior leadership or someone who was leading a project, asking her how best to deal with the situation in someone who is a senior figure, who is leading a company, was so helpful, because then I got sort of a first chance to go, like a practice run with someone before I actually put my hand up in real time. So that was one thing. I think also at the start of my career, it was really good to get, I think I mentioned this earlier about the outside perspective. So I've only been at one company since sort of being in market research. So it's very easy to stay in that sort of bubble of, this is everything I know and I don't know anything else of how to do research. And having someone else to bounce ideas off, to be an ally outside of my company, was just completely reassuring at the start of my career, especially when I couldn't see many people who look like me and who were like me around me. To have someone like that outside of my company showing me that there are other people like us, there are other people who with the same values, who are striving for the same things and reaching the top, like the people on this panel, was invaluable, to say the least. And also just seeing the wider world of market research, so client side, other agencies, what other agencies are up to. I'm completely content, and like, I love my agency, but it's cool to see what other places are doing as well.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. What changes, Nasya, this might be for you, what changes would you hope to see in the industry driven by mentorship at CORE?
That's really good.
Let me just add to that. There's a question that's coming from one of the audience. He says, if there's time, they're very kind of them to say that, what are your views on how mentorship can support minority professionals moving into leadership positions? So what can we do in the industry to help drive that? What can we do in CORE? And then I'm going to go over to Michelle on a wider industry question.
Cool. That's a really good question. And it's something that has been at the forefront of my mind, I think, throughout my career in market research. We know with research, it's always key to have representative samples, as it gives you the confidence to make decisions. Research, as we know, has been used to inform policy, develop policy, innovate, develop many industries. And the data is only going to be as good as what you put in. And so it's important to have that diversity of minds, especially at an ethnic minority level, that can feed into the shaping of research, so that the outcomes of that aren't limited, because we know what you put in is what you're going to get out, right? And so with that in mind, I'd love to see the CORE mentorship help facilitate people breaking those glass ceilings, so that we see an ethnically diverse research landscape at all levels. And we're not just talking about implementers or project managers, which is great, and we need to be at all levels, but we're talking about decision makers. Because if people see, and this is something I ask, younger people, because I've worked with youth groups in the past, what industries they want to go into, they're going to go for industries where they see people that look like them, at all levels, because we know representation matters. And if we don't see that at all levels, then we're going to, this situation and this issue will continue for the future researchers to come. You're not going to have that diverse makeup if we don't sort that out now. And so in terms of practical ways of facilitating, having those allies, people that, you know, do look like you, who have made it, you know, facilitating introductions, opportunities, workshops, because even from my experience, I think it would have been so vital to have this at the beginning, so I could have navigated some opportunities, navigate some issues, and avoid certain mistakes that can actually push you back in your career. So those are some of the things that come to my mind, and I think CORE are taking the right steps to start making that change.
That's very helpful, Nasya, and a very good question has just come in here. And I'm going to try and balance between questions and some of the areas that I wanted to ask on. And there's a question here from someone. I won't read out their name unless they tell me to read out their name on the list here. Where this person works, it's a big company here, client side, big company. There's a reverse mentoring program where people from non-white backgrounds share their lived experience with senior leaders. Are there any thoughts on this type of program? And I'm going to open it up to all of us, so that if you just put your hand up and I'll say your name and you can answer it. What are our thoughts on that? Reverse mentoring.
I like to answer that one. I think, you know, we all should be fond of it. We are fond of it at CORE. I mean, reverse mentoring, what does that mean? It means, you know, senior execs or, you know, junior execs mentoring each other. So age shouldn't be a factor here. You know, senior leaders can actually learn by learning, you know, rising you know, technology trends, something that they could adapt to, and junior execs could really learn how to become a leader. So both will be benefiting from, you know, these opportunities. And so I'm absolutely all for it. And I don't see why it should be a problem for anyone. I mean, we just wish we would see more people opt to it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got maybe a slight different perspective on this. So it would, for me, with the reverse mentoring, I would always want to understand the why. Why are we doing this? Is it to educate and help those understand the lived experience of others? Because mentorship for me has to have a goal and a common goal and heading in the right direction. And if that is the goal, education, that's fine. But I also think that it's not on the person of the ethnic minority to always educate others, because you can educate yourself as well. I think with ethnically, if you're doing that reverse mechanism, there has to be a clear goal as to what you're trying to achieve and how it benefits both parties. So yeah, that would be my only take on that.
Yeah, I'd like to jump on that. I think I completely agree with what both of you just said there. I think it can be such a positive thing as long as you define that why. Because yeah, there's so much out there right now. You can easily look and find so many people's real lived experiences. But if it's actually something that you want to work on within the organization, things like that, it can be quite helpful, because if they aren't made aware of things that are going on, they're never going to know, particularly if it's within the organization. So if that is something that you are comfortable sharing with the senior leadership, if that is something that they are wanting to hear and also do something about, rather than just listen and not do anything, then that can be really, really valuable.
Any further thoughts on that from anybody else? Good. Well, that was actually from Matthew from BT. I think they're a big company. So that was a great question. Thank you very much. Now, someone's just asking here, does mentoring have a time frame? I mean, how long should a mentor and a mentee spend time together? I mean, how often should they speak? How long for? Perhaps you can answer that particular question. And an adjunct to it is it helpful for the mentor or even the mentee to recommend other people, allies, that can be introduced to the person or each other to help on a particular slither of something that might be helpful? So how long, time frame? Please put your hand up.
I mean, Bob, with that one, I wouldn't think time frame is important. I think we should work with each other and see where, you know, the relationship goes. I mean, I know there have been sort of things popping up about 6 months, but I don't think that's enough. I mean, I'm still talking to my mentee, and we've been talking for over a year now, not as often, but we still have that, you know, that conversation and then that discussion. So I don't think there should be a time limit. I think, you know, you should have the objectives, and if you've met those objectives, that's when you should perhaps think about moving on. I mean, with my mentee, I actually did introduce a professional in the industry, someone from the recruitment side actually, to help me out, because there was something that I, you know, wasn't really geared up to answer. So yes, I definitely bring the professionals in from the, you know, industry and see where they can help too. Absolutely.
Nasya, and then I want to hear from Michelle. All right, after that, Nasya, you next.
Yeah, I think it can depend. Like, it depends on why you needed that mentor in the first place. Some could be to navigate your career for a long point, you know, a long time. I've got some mentors that have just been in my life consistently in and out. And then sometimes it can be for a specific purpose, i.e. I need to transition into this role. You've been able to do that. Can you help me? And you know that that goal has been achieved when that person transitions, and then it might just become a friendship and not necessarily that mentee-mentor relationship. So I think it depends on what is the goal here. I'm a goal-orientated person. I always like to think of what am I trying to achieve here? Is it someone to always soundboard ideas of, and therefore that might be a long-term relationship? Or is it for a particular goal and purpose? And to your point on, should we introduce professionals? I think so. You're not always going to be the smartest person on a particular topic, and if that can help your mentee and you make those connections, then that's great, because then you're just growing the connections and growing their network, which will help them in the long term as well.
Michelle.
Yes, initially when we set up the scheme, we always recommended 12 months, just because obviously we want to try and help as many people as possible, and we don't have enough mentors to be able to have everyone continue forever. But saying that, we have had some partnerships that have stuck together since 2016. And I know that some of our more experienced mentors are still in contact with all of their mentees. But we do recommend 12 months. That gives them a good chance to be able to reach their goals. And in terms of networking and connections, absolutely. That's often one of the reasons why that's one of the objectives of the mentees, that they want to try and get connected with someone who has different network of people. So yes, definitely, I definitely think that's a good to have.
Yeah, I just want to jump off the back of that. So the wire scheme was also 12 months. It was sort of a recommended 12-month commitment, and then you can have a conversation right at the end. And we had that conversation, and thankfully both of us wanted to continue with it, because we had such a pleasant experience with, like, both ways actually. And with the sort of referring to other people, at the start of my mentorship, sort of 12 months, I had just been promoted, and I'd never actually worked with someone who had that job title. So I didn't really understand, I didn't have any role models to look up to in terms of what I should be doing. And my mentor actually introduced me to the person with the equivalent job title at her company. And that has also been like a peer mentorship, or like a sort of friendship that I formed with someone in another company, because she couldn't tell me what an SRE was meant to do these days, but she said, I know someone who does do it very successfully. And that was so valuable to me.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Any more thoughts on that? And I'm going to read out a question here, which is there's quite a few number of questions coming through. I think we've touched on them some already, but if I haven't, just send the question in again, and I'll try my hardest to answer it. We've got someone here who, I'm going to read out the question. A colleague recommended this Zoom meeting to me a couple of hours ago, and I've started to register to become a mentee. I was curious of the reason to ask the following question as part of our core process. Tell us about some of your achievements. And this person asks, this makes me wonder, what counts as an achievement? If this is just work-based, or something that you've achieved outside, a reward, or received something else from external praise. That person says, I can also feel that self-deprecation kicking in at the time. And I know I've other things to be proud of. So that's the first part of the question. The second part is, achievements. The second part is, on another point, and I'm sure this person took a lot of guts to write this question in. I'm hoping to write something internally at work for the International Women's Day on hijabs in the workplace. I've yet to come across an hijabi in a senior leadership position, and I'm curious where and how I can find them. Would there be anyone at Core? Who wants to try and answer that? I think I'll try and answer it. I'll answer it. Well, look, one of the things that, and I've been in a mentorship program myself as a mentee and indeed a mentor. One of the people that I've come across, and it's thanks to Sia, she introduced me to them, is a wonderful person called Dr. Jane Lewis. Dr. Jane Lewis head up the Stepping Up program for women in business, not market research, but women in business in general. She's on this as a member of our audience and has very kindly given me a nudge to say, I can help. So whoever asked that question, if you go onto LinkedIn and find Dr. Jane Lewis of the Stepping Up program, I've been a mentor with one of her people in her program, and a lady from Somalia in the 13th floor in Bristol, trying to set up a children's activity club. We did this process for 6 months, got her a website, got to get some funding, and we keep in touch. And a year ago, not a year ago, 3 months ago, I got her some tickets for 50 kids and 20 adults to watch Bristol City play football for free. So that's the kind of thing you can do. So whoever asked that question, Dr. Jane Lewis, what does she says here? She may be able to find someone. Now she's given me her email address, so please write this down, and then I'll go back to our session. I'm sure she doesn't mind me sharing it because she's put it down here. jane.lewis@davidsonpartners.com. Whoever asked that question, Jane Lewis, Stepping Up program, she'll be able to help you. Right, now, let me put a general question there. We generally think that it's quite vital to have mentorship programs in place. Has anybody experienced any kickback from anywhere for you going to talk to somebody in the market research industry but not working at your company? Have employers or anybody thought, oh, I'm not sure I want someone else who works in our industry knowing something about me? What are your thoughts on it? Come on then, Michelle.
Within the matching process, we ask everyone to sign an agreement. So sometimes we do have conflicts of interest, which can be hugely frustrating on our side of things because we think we found a perfect match and they're a little bit too perfect. So we have had some objections because they might be a client of the mentee or the mentor, or they might have worked with each other in the past, so that can be an issue. So yeah, we have, and I think when we initially started up the scheme, we did have some employers were a little bit worried, but since then, I think people are normally quite open with their employer about being involved in the scheme. So I think it's normally absolutely fine. And as I say, we always make sure that the mentor and mentee sign our commitment to this scheme. Have to make sure they're confidential.
That leads me to something else. Why do you think some mentorship alignments fail? Why don't work in some cases?
Sorry, was that to me? Sorry.
Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, sorry. A variety of reasons. As I said before, commitment and communication is often key. So we've had some really confident, experienced mentors who approach us because they just not heard from their mentee for quite some time. And when we get in touch with the mentee, it isn't that they don't like the mentor, it's just the lack of time in, it's just been obviously over the last 2 years been particularly difficult. So I think communication breaks down and one party or the other just doesn't tell them
tell each other that they just don't have time for the scheme at that time. Sometimes obviously it's we've made a bad match, and in those circumstances we always try and encourage people to let us know, again communicate with us, and we'll try and rematch. But yeah, it's normally just lack of communication, and one party doesn't have time to commit to the partnership.
And how should a mentee feel if they've found themselves their first ever mentorship program, they're really excited, looking forward to it, and it hasn't kind of worked? What words of wisdom, encouragement, and sort of helping hand would you give that person? This is to everybody. What would you give that person, to encourage them to stick at it?
I can speak on this one, and it's a bit of a tough one because I had such a positive experience last year, obviously with Shazia, and been raving to everyone I know about signing up for like some sort of mentorship program. And it can be hard once those expectations are almost set too high mistakenly by myself to pursue it when it doesn't go quite as you imagined in your head. But what I've said to people is just to really stick at it, and also, as we were mentioning earlier, define the why of why you want to, what you want to get out, and then at least you can come with some sort of structure and get what you're looking for from them. If you go in with minimal expectations other than this amazing person who's going to sort your life out and make everything better, it can be really hard to meet that. If you come up with more clear, specific objectives, then those are easier for both people to go to the mentorship with.
No, absolutely, Annabelle, I agree. I think if you're not following up after your session with the mentee and not sort of highlighting what's been achieved, or, I mean, what I had to do is actually provide my mentee some homework on a, fortnightly basis that, you're going to work on this and this is what you're going to do. And that really helped us measure, everything and the goals. And we were able to, at the end, see how much we've done collectively. So I think it's definitely following up, writing up, what's been discussed, what they need to do, and just basically tracking everything in writing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Having a structure to work from, and having those, I guess it comes from the researchy kind of background, having those KPIs and those success criteria that you're ticking off will help. And then also, if it doesn't work, you can at least analyze the lessons learned. So why didn't it work? And learn a bit more about yourself and what you actually need. So it's not necessarily a setback, but it can actually help you for the next time if you understand why it didn't work and what you actually need, so you're getting closer to your goal.
There's a question that's come in, and it's from Sia, and it's actually a very good one. And it might be a rhetorical question on her part because I think she knows the answer, but it's a good question to put to you as the panelist, and I think it's one that the audience will be very interested to hear. We often talk in our industry about KPIs, what's a key performance indicator? What is the point of measurement that you've done something well? If you're in sales, you've got to get your revenue, your profit, or if it's in another area, you've got to hit a goal. But how do you measure the success of a mentorship program? Given your own experiences and also your own views. So I'm going to go and ask everybody. It's a question for everyone, and we'll have to have an answer. So whoever wants to put their hand up first, please do so. Otherwise, I'll just point at someone randomly. Nasya, you can't.
I was gonna put my hands up. That's fine. Touching on what I kind of just previously said, I think it's good to have in the beginning your goals, your objectives, and have that discussion with your mentor. And then from the goals and objectives, you kind of create maybe 3 points as to this is how I know I've achieved this, and because the outcome will look like this. So having a focus on outcome as opposed to just, something a little bit quantitative that you can actually say that, yeah, I've actually ticked this off. In my experience, one of my previous mentors, I wanted to learn how to network better. How do I go about doing that? We said, okay, how many new people do you need to connect with? What industries do you need to connect with them? And how are you going to go about doing it? And what the outcome will look like. You have 10 new email addresses that you can reach. And that's how we tracked it on a quarterly basis. And she also gave me then the tips to be able to do that. Because, it's as well saying here's the goal and here's how you achieve it, but the actual steps on how to get there is where your mentor can chip in, I think.
I'd like to say something actually. With my mentee, I realised that there was imposter syndrome, you know, in that personality, and I've obviously seen someone mention it as well. And so with that being a personal sort of trait, you know, how do you work on that? I mean, the things that obviously I was recommending is be easy on yourself. You know, you are obviously, you know, very good at your job, but it was a huge barrier in progression. So, you know, you get challenges like this where you actually have to become a bit of a therapist as well, and work towards you know, sort of trying to just make them realize that don't be so hard on yourself. You know, it's you know, be happy you know, professional life. So yeah, that was a bit of a tough, I think, conversation, but I think we managed to come out of it a little bit anyway.
I'm not like a big numbers person. Like I don't have many like KPIs and stuff that I've tracked my mentorship with, but I think looking back on the past year and a half or so, I can definitely say that it's been successful because I've gotten so much value that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't have had a mentor. There's been so many parts of me growing as a researcher, or even just as a person, to be honest, that I can say without the mentor, I would not have had that guidance and that person to go to. And even if it's just this thing's really annoyed me at work, and they reply going, okay, let's jump on a call and we can talk through it. It's small things like that aren't big life-changing things, but actually they all build up and they've really helped me grow as a person.
I would say something to everyone really. It's not necessarily that they've achieved all of their objectives, but they've just both benefited from the scheme. And we've had so many amazing stories over the years that mentors and mentees that just saying thank you, they've really benefited from being part of the scheme. And I've heard the same about Core and Wire. So it's just really that, I think that's a fantastic success.
All right. Now, Matthew Lukes again from BT is the note to everybody. Success in this context would be to have a workforce, I love this, that properly represents the community it serves. We can and must measure that. So if we don't see representation increasing and pay gaps closing, then we have not succeeded, whatever the corporate leaders say. Be ready, Matthew, when you go back to the office, right? Whatever the corporate leaders say. What are your thoughts on that, team? What do you think?
I think that's personally spot on.
100%.
Yeah, we have to, you know, we're an industry that literally tracks, and, you know, we've got trackers for days and stuff. And this is something that you can quantify and check those trends over time to see, are those pay gaps decreasing? Are we seeing people that look different at all levels of our businesses, and close those gaps and, you know, hold people to account, because that's what we should do with such information.
I see a sea of nodding heads, which clearly means that resonates through to all of us. Jane says that I think the Mentee Wheel. I've never heard of the Mentee Wheel. Have you heard of the Mentee Wheel? The Mentee Wheel is a good way to track KPIs, as you can plot your journey from the start, the middle, and the end. So maybe there is some graphical representation, a bit like my world of cricket, where you got the wagon wheel of where the balls were shot and where the person spends most of their hitting. You can track yourself on certain things and dimensions, both personally and at work. We're coming up to about 5 or 6 minutes to go. So anyone who's viewing, please fire in your questions now and we'll try and have them. Before we do that, I'm going to put all of you on the spot, but in a nice spot. And you know, just start thinking. I'll ask a question and I'll speak for a bit. It gives you an answer to think of the answer. I'd like each of you to have a 30-second or 20-second soundbite. This is you, just general thinking and your views of everything that you've heard and said today as the sign-off message that we want the 70 or so people that are tuned in to have as a takeaway from the whole mentorship world, and particularly the roundtable that we're having here today and within Core. So what snippets of something as a takeaway, that strap line, but you can take a few words over it, would you like people who are tuning in to come away with from today? Tough question, eh? Tough question.
I personally would say, do not hesitate. You know, please speak up. Please join CORE. Do not worry, and just, you know, drive your career and get the help that you need if you need it and if you want it. From the mentee perspective, anyway. And for mentors, please, we want more mentors. And so, yeah, we want you, you know, to share your stories, your success stories. So I think that's my message for everyone out there.
Yeah, I can go next. I think from a mentee perspective, exactly what you were just saying, Raj, like, it is exactly what you make of it. If you want help and you want to further your career, you don't even need to be sort of unhappy where you are. You can be wanting to excel further in the place where you are. And if you have a mentor, it makes it that much easier, and it makes it so much more empowering as well to have an ally outside of where you're working. And it's just, I think it's an invaluable connection that everyone should be making. And if you allow yourself to be vulnerable and take the advice and also implement the advice, because you can listen, but if you don't do anything, you need to have that courage to follow through on it.
Yeah, I don't mind going next. One of a mentor I've had said to me once, which has always stayed with me, is the fact that mentorship to her was all about, you know, the level that she's at, wherever it's at level 5, level 6, it's all about sending the elevator back down to bring the next person up to your level. And I think that's, for me, that's what it is. I want to see people do well. I want to see people flourish. And if you're the same, then this is something that, you know, is a means to do that and actually make a change in an industry that is so important.
Michelle?
I would just say get involved, really, whether it's with MRS or CORE or any of the other mentoring schemes, and share your stories. We're always looking for people to share their stories, and if you know, people from all different backgrounds are able to share their stories, then everyone can see that it's achievable. It's achievable, and they, you know, they can just know that they can be involved too. So please do get involved, and please do share your stories.
Oh, we've got a couple of minutes left. Last question, kindly sent in by Sia, who's been a real support on the questions here today. Do you think companies should be doing more to push mentoring for their employees, or do you think it's more of an individual responsibility that we as individuals put our hands up to say, I want to be a mentee, or in all of our cases, we're going down the elevator and we want to be the mentor? What are your thoughts on that?
I think everyone should be given an option. I think if they need help and they need that guidance, they should be given the option. People shouldn't be hesitating or scared about what others will think if they go down that route. So yeah, absolutely, Sia, I would say, please give everyone the option, and it should be something that, you know, the organization arranges for everyone. Whether they opt for it, that's up to them.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, so my manager, Natasha, I can see you're on here, so hi. She wasn't even my manager at the time, but she was the one who sent me the Wire mentoring scheme, and I can't be more grateful for that. And she didn't just send it to me; she sent it to lots of different women in the company, and I have taken that and sent the Wire scheme and also the CORE scheme this year to all these other wonderful women in my company and all these wonderful people of color in my company, because it shouldn't just be down to one person to have to show you all these opportunities. It should be promoted because it benefits everyone. There's no reason not to promote this to the rest of your colleagues, I think.
I would say it's both. I think it's really good to have those initiatives pushed by the company to say that we are encouraging this. So you know that, you know, you can have meetings with a mentor that are outside the business as usual, and it's encouraged. That's really helpful to do. But then also there might be people outside of the industry that you want to talk to on different levels. You might have someone that's really great at networking. You might have someone who's really great at scaling businesses or tech or something that's just even a personal interest. I think if you see someone and you like what they're doing and you have the access to them, I've always said and encouraged people to just ask, drop them a LinkedIn message and say, hey, you're really good at this. Do you have time to maybe meet on a quarterly basis about X, Y, and Z and see what happens?
That's wonderful. Now, while we've got 2 minutes left, all the participants, all the viewers, could you please in the chat either put a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the session today? If you want to put a thumbs down, please don't. Just write to us and tell us, and we'll take care of it and make sure we do better next time. But it would help us a lot. And I think especially for Raj, Nasya, Annabelle, and Michelle to see these thumbs up coming up, because I know the 4 of them have worked incredibly hard, put a lot of information together, and I think can only do their well-being so good this afternoon to know, oh, these thumbs are coming up. Thank you very much. If we haven't answered anything, if we haven't covered anything, then please do let us know, and we'll try and do that in the next roundtable. I'm going to draw this to a close now. We're at 13:59. I know you've got just an hour for lunch, and you've got lots of other things to do. I'm going to give you all a sound bite to say goodbye. Thank you very much. And then we're going to say thank you to everybody, and it's over. I'll start with you, Raj, and then Annabelle, Nasya, and Michelle.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Cor. Thank you, a special thank you to Graham as well for pushing me to do this. And Nasya, Annabelle, Michelle, you guys have been great. Lovely sharing the space with you. Thank you.
Well, I'll go next. Thank you everyone for joining, and also the whole team for setting up, and my wonderful co-panelists. It's been such a pleasant experience, my first time doing something like this, so I'm really happy to have shared something so important to me, and that we had some really good questions. So thank you so much, everyone.
I don't mind going next. Yeah, thank you so much for just joining in. I know it's not easy to give up your lunch hour, especially if you've got loads of things going on, but it's a really important topic, and my co-panelists have just shared, I think, with so much passion, with the same passion that I have on something that's really important. So yeah, don't hesitate to get involved.
Thank you. It was a real honour to be invited, and it's great that so many people joined us. So thank you. And it was really nice to meet you.
That's absolutely wonderful. We're going to call this a wrap. I want to thank all of my core colleagues, especially Charlene, who's really helped put this together. So thank you, everybody. It's a wrap, and it's been emotional. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.